circles around someplace. Take off that thing.
In 1978, a small independent film called Halloween was released to little fanfare. In fact, it was critically panned by the New Yorker and the LA Times. Despite this, and the small budget of only some $325,000, Halloween went on to smash records in terms of budget to box office profit ratio, pulling in an estimated $70 million worldwide. More than this, the film left an impression on cinema, the horror genre, slasher films, and the American psyche that is immeasurable. Director John Carpenter and his longtime collaborator and then girlfriend Deborah Hill co-wrote the screenplay. Carpenter brought together what he called just a bunch of kids to help make the film. This included editors Charles Bornstein and Tommy Wallace, and the incredible lighting work of cinematographer Dean Cundy, who later went on to work on several big-budget films. Halloween sports a sleek running time of just 91 minutes. When Carpenter was first approached with the prospect of making a horror film, he was only given a rather vague concept about babysitter murders. To this, he added producer Irwin Yablon's idea to focus on Halloween night. Carpenter also added Southern Gothic fables about an old haunted house, and an experience he had while in college observing a patient in a psychiatric facility. Carpenter further drew inspiration from Hitchcock's Psycho, and created a story of suspense punctuated by scares. Together, Deborah Hill and Carpenter created a sort of haunted character, Michael Myers, rather than a haunted house. Both drew upon names, locations, and history from where they had grown up. Carpenter was strongly influenced by his time in Kentucky.
After 6 sequels and a recent remake, the horror classic Halloween celebrates its 30th anniversary this year.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
It's especially sentimental to Bowling Green, Kentucky, because Halloween director John Carpenter used to live here. When he made Halloween in 1978, he included several references from the Bowling Green area.
I remember over in Russellville, old Charlie Bowles, about 50.
These sites have since become a hot tourist attraction in the region. The film became the most successful independent film of its time and put Carpenter on the map to filmmaking stardom. 30 years later, it's still highly talked about.
It was noted as the first horror movie to bring terror to the suburbs. It's almost just as if you could be in Bowling Green.
Now, my parents were the ones who said, John, you can do anything you want to do. You have to just go do it. You can do anything you want to do, but create something, make something. Write something, say something, paint something, compose something, do something. Get out there and do it. You can do whatever you want. My dad had given me his 8mm movie camera, and I'd made movies with my school friends back in the old days, and I thought, look, this is it. You got to try it now. So I convinced my father, by begging and pleading, to send me to a film school. And I was accepted at USC, and USC is the best film school in the world.
2 years later, The Resurrection of Bronco Billy, a film he wrote as a student at USC, had won Carpenter his first Academy Award. Then, in 1978, his trademark Halloween hit the theaters. He says it was that film that branded him as one of Hollywood's most prolific horror filmmakers.
It was a pretty big, successful film for its time. And so people recognized me and associated me with horror films, and I got typecast. I actually got in this business to make westerns.
Those were the type of movies he grew up with.
My favorite movie of all time I saw at the Capitol. It was Rio Bravo with John Wayne. And it was booked into the theater for, I think it was 2 or 3 days, and it ended up playing over a week. It just kept playing and playing because the movie was so popular. And I must have seen Rio Bravo 2 or 3 times during that time, and that was it. That was 1959.
Many of Carpenter's boyhood friends would act out characters he had created, and most of the time, their stage was at Carpenter's house, a residence most Westerners know well.
I grew up on the Western campus, literally. Behind the Kentucky building, before they built the girls' dorms over there, it's a little log house. That's where I lived. I lived on campus property. There was a gigantic garden around me when I was growing up. It was every flower that was indigenous to Kentucky. And we were in a little cabin sitting down at a log house with a log fence around it.
And he would have a rough script, and he would say, okay, now we're playing cowboys and Indians, and when I point to you, you fall down, and you shoot him, and you do this. And he was directing people back when he was 10, 11 years old. So yeah, he's doing exactly what he was chosen to do, I think.
I would think the biggest influences on my life, besides my parents, who are the greatest parents anybody could ever have for getting you to be creative, they gave me gifts that you can't buy anywhere. They gave me a love of music, a love of creativity, a love of movies. But I would say my school friends, because it was with them, my college, high school friends, my class went through kindergarten through 12th grade, and we all stayed together. And I learned about life and myself through them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I suppose that most of who I am and what I believe in was figured out walking around the grounds of the Kentucky building after dinner, and when the sun's going down, before all the construction in that area. I don't think I've ever been in a more beautiful spot in my life. And all the thoughts of I don't know, life and death, people, beauty, cruelty, fear, whatever I was thinking about, I thought about walking by myself there. I was a loner, but I grew up in a paradise. And I kind of became who I am there.
Carpenter also famously scored the film and comically listed in the credits music by the Bowling Green Philharmonic Orchestra, a one-man orchestra. Carpenter and Hill penned the script in about 3 weeks and used as background information what they knew about the Celtic festival Samhain, in a night where souls, spirits, ghouls, and ghosts could terrorize the living, and this was to be embodied first by a child and then an adult boogeyman, an unkillable evil, which was a surprise for audiences at the time. Halloween's success was driven by massively positive word of mouth. The film was anchored by the fantastic acting talent of Donald Pleasence. Although Carpenter, being a fan of Hammer horror films, originally wanted either Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee, he was able to land Pleasence, who brought with him none of the Hammer horror campiness. Portraying the top-flight psychiatrist Dr. Loomis, Pleasence brought real gravitas to the role.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
The other major accomplishment was casting the then little-known Jamie Lee Curtis as the quiet, reserved, bookish heroine, Laurie Strode. Although it didn't hurt that Curtis was the daughter of psycho actress Janet Leigh and actor Tony Curtis. Jamie Lee was also not Carpenter's original choice. Finally, when it came to Myers, the mask was all important. The mask, like everything else in the film, was obtained on the cheap. Tommy Wallace bought a $2 Captain Kirk mask at a costume shop, enlarged the eye holes, and spray-painted the flesh-tone mask into a bluish white. Filming took around 21 days, of which Carpenter only had Pleasance for 5. To simulate a small suburban Midwestern town, the crew had about 3 bags full of leaves that they painted and had to recollect and bag up for each day of filming in Southern California. A common theory that circulates is that in horror films, if one drinks, does drugs, or has sex, that this leads to the person being murdered by the bad guy. They go further and try to claim that this is a moralistic point being pushed by the writer or director. Both John Carpenter and Deborah Hill reject this theory. For his part, Carpenter is no prude and has always been a radical nonconformist. In fact, his anti-hero leads often embody a rogue mentality. This is possibly best exemplified by roles played by Carpenter's longtime collaborator and close friend, the inimitable Kurt Russell. In such roles as Snake Plissken in Escape from New York, to R.J. McCready in The Thing, and even Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China, this devil-may-care attitude is ever present.
And remember, once you're inside, you're on your own.
Oh, you mean I can't count on you?
No.
Good.
Whether we make it or not, we can't let the thing freeze again. Maybe we'll just warm things up a little around here. We're not getting out of here alive. But neither's that thing. You're out of your mind, Wang. God bless you. It's all in the reflexes.
We live in a time when book and film analysts think that their personal pet theories are more important than authorial or directorial intent. I reject such approaches. The intent is paramount. Carpenter has explained that the character Laurie Strode is, like the actress Jamie Lee Curtis, smart, attractive, and capable of nuance beyond those around her. Laurie Strode specifically is quiet and introspective, whereas others around her are just normal, ordinary, everyday teenagers, in Carpenter's words. And they are busy with other things, and so they notice less than she does. Carpenter had no interest in moralizing about drinking, drugs, or sex. He had a larger dichotomy to present about the embodiment of evil itself. He has described Michael Myers as part man, part force of nature. This element is emphasized during a scene where Laurie is being stalked by Myers and he stands outside her school. The teacher is lecturing on differing conceptions of destiny and fate, and whether or not fate must be underpinned by religious belief. Moreover, Dr. Loomis often gives voice to the directorial intent by referring to Myers as, quote, it, rather than he, and as the evil. This is repeated as Myers is also called the Boogeyman, and in the credits is listed as both adult Michael Myers and the Shape, as portrayed by Nick Castle. The script refers to Myers as looking unhuman under the mask. Carpenter intended Myers to be seen as a personification of evil. We are never meant as viewers to identify with Myers. It wasn't caused by bad parenting. It wasn't caused by mental illness. It is quite simply evil incarnate, with a man's body as the vehicle for this evil to operate in our world. It has no sadness with which we ought to ever sympathize or empathize, and this was Carpenter's primary reason for never wanting to make a sequel, Halloween 2. Carpenter said the moment he had to move forward with a sequel, he knew that the next thing is a demand or a search for motive, something that he never wanted to address at all. In fact, to even ask the question, why does Michael kill, is to fundamentally misunderstand the anti-character and Halloween. There is no motive. He is reasonless evil. To ask why is akin to asking why a hurricane hurts people. Halloween is an absolute masterpiece, a masterpiece in settings, characters, and the anti-character of Myers, lighting, cinematography, and music. The budget was a part of the reason for this, forcing the cast and crew to use authentic wardrobes and vehicles, much of which were the actors and actresses' own. In terms of Myers is the absence of those things which make us human, notably our humanity, our sympathy for others, our desires for acceptance. Myers craves none of these things. In fact, its reasons for murder are never revealed, and this is very much intentional. Carpenter leaves the blank canvas for others to project their views and beliefs on. This is precisely where many a great film analyst and film reviewer goes awry. They think that they have got it all figured out. Myers had a sexual fixation, they'll claim. Myers is like a real-world serial killer who replaced their sexual incompetence or deviance with a desire to inflict pain upon others. Myers had an ancestral desire for his sister, and many more. All of these claims and others besides have been made, and all are equally wrong. Returning to something I mentioned before, Myers is reasonless evil, which is not to say that it is incapable of reason. On the contrary, the Shape is extraordinarily calculating and is often many moves ahead of its prey. Myers is also shown to sometimes admire its own work, akin to a sculptor who is surprised or impressed by the outcome of what they've done. Additionally, there are numerous hints that the supernatural is at work. Doors opening seemingly on their own, Myers' inexplicable ability to flawlessly drive, another door closes and an adult cannot open it, yet a small girl opens it with ease. The tombstone Myers removed from the ground was not dug out of the ground, it was pulled directly up and out, which is a mind-boggling feat of strength. Myers repeatedly resists extreme damage from being stabbed in the neck with a knitting needle, has an eye jabbed out with a clothes hanger, is stabbed in the chest, and is ultimately shot 6 times only to once more rise and disappear into the darkness. And it is this last that punctuates the supernatural element. There is no naturalistic explanation for this combination of events. Repeatedly throughout the film, we are treated to tracking shots and perspectives that cause unease because we are unsure as the audience when we are being offered the boogeyman's point of view or merely one relaying the story for us. Additionally, we are disturbed to find Myers operating in full daylight. We are used to killers who move about, stalk, and prey only at night, but not Myers. Adding to this mystique, we do not know Myers' origins. It isn't anything found in the occult, or lower-class child abuse, or psychosis. It just is. Another aspect to which the audience is entreated is that the sexually titillating aspects are not so for Myers at all. Myers is not enticed, not impressed, not excited in the least. In fact, such things have no impact on its path to murder. This aligns with Myers' almost out-of-body catatonic state to which we and its parents are exposed in the beginning of the film, and that Dr. Loomis observes when it is his patient. This is further supported by other murders and kills. For example, Myers murders a mechanic off-screen and takes his clothes. Other notable things about Myers is that there is little concern shown for concealing or disposing of evidence. It leaves bodies lying about in broad daylight, not buried or even covered. Indeed, some are put on display for Laurie or others to discover later. Nick Castle, the main person portraying the Shape, once asked Carpenter what his character's motive was, and he was simply told to walk from one point to another. Carpenter's goal was to keep Myers hidden or sunken into the shadows often. The less that is known about evil, the better. Once fully explained, the mystery is gone. Other subtleties get missed. For instance, the in-film legend of the boogeyman says it can only come out on Halloween night. And actions in the movie that had nothing to do with the fixity of rules were mistaken by film buffs and slasher genre fans to be rigid. More than 100 attempts to replicate the cheapness and box office success were made following Halloween, but many of these tended toward the Fangoria, gore, blood, and guts method rather than the psychological and spiritual thriller that underpins Carpenter's more suspenseful approach. Myers is a dark and deadly rebellion against goodness. It arrived without any warning whatsoever. It simply became, and it was. It is a destroyer of calm. Just as the music reaches into you with a stab, Myers does the same. It was never meant to be a morality play about gender roles or lecturing teens about their behavior. Indeed, the entire search for motive is a search for the control of evil. It is an attempt to diagnose evil and to medicalize it, to categorize it, to safely file it away in order to reduce one's anxiety about evil. But there is no controlling Myers. There is no safe category for it, for the Shape, for the boogeyman. This is because it is simply an embodied evil. It is evil incarnate, using the body of Myers as a vehicle for evil to operate in the world. It isn't to be understood like the BTK killer, Ted Bundy, or Jeffrey Dahmer, vile human serial killers with human motives for evil acts. Myers is an evil that has emanated into our realm. With its high rewatch value, Halloween is not simply a classic. It has attained iconic status, and it is quite simply a cinematic masterpiece. If Psycho was the Citizen Kane of the slasher horror subgenre, then Halloween is the Godfather. Finally, it is compelling to note the many ways in which Halloween echoes, reflects, and refracts in Scream, to which I will turn in the next film episode.
He's a ghost, he's a god, he's a man, he's a guru. You're one microscopic cog in his catastrophic plan, designed and directed by his red right hand.
What's your favorite scary movie?